the essence of this duo show. I think that's what's really making me feel really excited about it, is that having an opportunity to blend our practices together.
My name is Nattoo. I am a visual artist from Jamaica. My work, it's magical realism through a Caribbean lens that manifests itself through mostly like paintings and mixed media work.
My name is Roisin. I'm an interdisciplinary artist and I'm based in London. My practice spans photography, sculpture, performance, video, and metal work.
I've had a few residencies before. This one, however, is going to be very different for a number of things because it's the first time I'm actually doing a residency like this where the aim is to work on a collaborative project. We have, Roisin is here, Seg is here, curator, artist that I'm working with. I've never had that experience before. I'm really excited by just what we're going to make and the magic that's going to happen from this. What I want to really develop through this residency is stories around water, and especially stories around the water spirits, the river mama. That's something that I really want to go deeper and explore throughout this residency. I am definitely hoping that this residency impacts our practice in some way and changes some things or allows for evolution. There's a lot of different ways of making and different ways that she does her work that I'm particularly curious and interested in. And I think this exchange of information is important. I welcome change, I welcome learning new things. Roisin's work is very familiar to me. I see a lot of ideas that we are both exploring, messages that we're both tackling and interrogating. And the interesting thing is that even though she is from the UK, she is also from here. The Jamaica tour isn't just this entirely new place. We're connected by many different strings.
This one's my first residency and it's a special one for me, working with Richard and fan of his work. Not only am I a fan of his work, it's also about where the residency is taking place. For me, he is, I guess, a diasporic-born Caribbean person. The opportunity to work in my homeland is something that's always going to be very special to me. It's going to also be something that helps me understand and evaluate who I am as a person and where I come from. And recontextualize maybe places that I didn't feel whole or didn't quite understand about myself. I am not used to working with someone so closely in my everyday studio practice, so it's going to be definitely interesting to learn to adapt to each other. And I think as well it will be really interesting as a woman and as a man, seeing different ways that we approach art as well, bringing different energies to it. I think that we are both two sides of the same coin in terms of the work that we do, but we approach it maybe in a little bit the same way, but the outcome is going to be quite interesting. I think that's the essence of this duo show. I think that's what's really making me feel really excited about it, having an opportunity to blend our practices together.
Water is at the center of my practice. I primarily use living water with watercolor because watercolor is a kind of medium that it's like a river in itself. It's a conversation when I'm making work because I never know what exactly the paint is going to do. It does something, I talk back to it, it talks back to me, and I quite like that. I work a lot with living water. I only paint with water that's from a natural source. These natural bodies of water have so much history, they've seen so much happen, and I like to invite the spirit of that within my work. My work is really about cultural preservation in remembering stories that might have been passed down from elders, oral history, that kind of thing. My work is really about preserving those memories and keeping all those memories and all that magic alive.
My practice is primarily based around creating, using art to create ways to tell stories and to connect people to their culture, which for me is mostly focusing on my Caribbean heritage. My practice has kind of moved and shifts, and it's a very dynamic beast as a practice as it is. So I guarantee it will change in some way, and I'm hoping for that, but I'm not sure how. Being in Jamaica, there's something being here that you can't find these stories without being here and going and doing the work. It's impossible. So for me, I have to usually go to my family, which is with my mom, my grandma, my uncle, to be able to access certain authentic stories about my own family. So actually being here feels like a privileged opportunity to me. And I feel very privileged about it because we're coming into someone's country in their space, and I know that this is my shared history and my shared heritage, but I still take it as a place that I'm an interloper, someone that's come to learn. Today we are at Orange Park Great House, just outside of Kingston, and it's a really beautiful, spectacular place. It's the home of Barrington Watson and his family, and being surrounded by all of this beautiful art and this culture is very meaningful, special to me. We've had the opportunity to stay here overnight and really just become acclimatized to the energy of the place, to understand the story. Barrington was one of the first black students at the Royal College of Art, and I've just recently graduated from the Royal College of Art. And so really he has actually paved the way for students and artists like myself to be able to be part of the institution, and you can really see that in his work that he's become a master. Learning about how a master really hones their craft. I've been reading some of the books that have been around in our rooms and learning about the story, the approach to his artistry, especially with illustration, learning more about his artistry and sort of looking at how he approaches his art has been really inspiring to me.
He's an artist that I really admire. This is really nice to be here in this space, being surrounded by so much of his work. His work was, celebrated by a lot of the culture. Jamaica really loved his work, but it wasn't just because of him being an artist from here. He was painting a lot of stories about Jamaica in itself.
I think to come back here and having answers to questions that I've had over my life has been important. It's helping me shape the woman that I want to be, I think, in the future, coming to that understanding of myself. It also, I think it's been great to also create a network here. And I think that's a really important part of my journey, is being able to create a network, working with Richard, getting to know Richard's friends and family. It makes me feel like I'm not estranged and I'm not as alone, and I have my own story of Jamaica that doesn't come from my grandparents or my mom. It just comes from myself, and being able to write that myself, I think is beautiful. But also it's about responsibility and legacy, and feeling able to allow myself to be a part of that legacy, whereas I felt more on the outside looking in, not being able to take ownership of that. I might have been born in England, but I'm still of Jamaican heritage, and this is still my birthright too. But not coming into a space and just trying to own that space, but rather coming in and learning and connecting and really feeling the space, the country, the culture, the food.
The thing that made me an artist, stories. I liked to read, and I would always love to read books with pictures. It was like wasn't going to read books that didn't have any pictures. Hell no. I wanted to see if my imagination was kind of lining up with the words, and in some way it helped me to develop my own way of seeing things. Storytelling is really important to me because it's something that inspired a lot of the curiosity by hearing stories about magic, hearing stories about the spiritual world, hearing stories about different types of folklore. Those stories they're really important to me because they're important to my culture, they're important to my people. I see the eyes of adults light up when they look at my work and they can tell me a story they haven't told in probably 50 years, 40 years, 30 years. It does something to them. It does something to me. It's that curiosity that really, leads to a lot of different explorations in my work, and it leads to me exploring the spiritual aspect of things, hearing stories about how different things happen, hearing doppel story, ghost stories, and different spiritual practices. Thinking about plants and the magic of plants and plant medicine. All of that is magic, and it's important to me within my work because a lot of this magic is being forgotten. Science stops at a point, and then after that point is just pure magic that science can't really explain. And I like to explore things beyond that point, and to preserve those messages beyond that point, because I think that's pretty important. Because how bad would it be for the next generation to have completely forgotten the magic that's so deeply rooted in our culture? People love to have the chance to express some of these stories they might have heard from their grandparents, they might have heard from their aunties growing up. And I think it's important to keep those stories alive. It does create a lot of connection and community. My work started out as being stories about like my own personal growth, things that I was really curious about within myself. There were times when things were happening in my life and I couldn't express it, I couldn't find words for it, and I would do paintings, and then these paintings would somehow show me that this might be the truth to what you're doing. These paintings give me answers to my life. Eventually now, when I started to do more work and I started to get really interested in folklore, there was this line where everything kind of started to kind of really blend and mesh together, and then it became like, now I'm telling story about the culture, yes, but then my own curiosity is put within this work that I'm doing, and that personal connection is made. And then in a way it helped me to really find my own voice to really tell these stories how I see them. And I think that was a very transformative moment for me, because I learned that as an artist it's okay for me to show the world how I see it.
Storytelling to me is not only is it a core part of my practice, but I think it's also a core part of my identity. I've always written, always explored through story, through mythology. It's something that I hold very dear to my heart. I think being able to contextualize myself in who I am through stories and connect my experience through other experience, whether it's collective or someone else's experience, I don't know, I think it helps me. So I feel like, I don't know, a bit greedy in that sense, but I've seen how, as a storyteller, how I've developed, how I connect with other people. So I guess for me, being able to maybe find a way to express something that throughout myself, it's a surprise to me to just express it and see what happens, and then I'm like, oh, so that's what I've been saying. I don't know. I think that there's something that can be important.
The story of River Mama is an origin story in a sense. How did she, come to be? How did she come to become the River Mama? How was she born? That's something that always been interested in, way back, but now with this body of work, I'm kind of really zoning in on that origin story, zoning in on this idea of her and the comb, and like seeing her combing her hair. What does that mean? I've heard stories of people finding the comb and then getting a dream about the river mama to bring back my comb. Then I've heard that the river mama leaves the comb for some people and they find it and they get riches. How the hell does she choose these people? I'm interested in that part of the story. And then my interpretation that we've kind of been working through is just how the night as a spirit within the magic world might have been the one to give her this comb made from moonflower, comb made from the red moon, and it has some kind of magical properties that maybe make her be able to become half humanoid, half human-like, but she's actually half crocodile. There's so many questions there that I'm really exploring to try to find these answers to within the world, because man, there really is magic everywhere. I'm excited to really imagine and to really reimagine, actually.
The story of the River Mama is sort of talking about femininity. I think for myself, I can't avoid that personal connection of what she means to me, and seeing that reflected in the stage of life that I am now, where I'm now an adult, I'm now fully a woman, and there's that personal connection of allowing myself to step into my womanhood, to step into my nature, whether that means being accepted or not, or whether that means not being understood. That's kind of how I've approached getting to know this mythology and this history. And historically what she represents rebellion in a lot of ways, and the untamable. And I think in terms of colonial history, that is very poignant. Like, the people of the Caribbean, we are so intrinsically linked to water, not just through trade, but how you see settlements and cities and towns within the island are all gathered around water. And so there's a reverence there, there's that relationship to community and individual, and she is that relationship, and I think she governs that relationship culturally. We have been some really beautiful places. Taking this year and also this now specific time to sort of really get to know the landscape and these natural resources has been really beautiful. Going to the waterfall, however, I felt like a release. I was able to have a conversation with the water, with the air, with the environment. I think that was really healing for me. And then we went to visit Flatbridge, which obviously has a bit of a precarious history, and I think it's a place that needs to be respected and revered. And giving offerings of fruit to the river and like coming and having that memory was beautiful, but it's also allowed me to release on a personal level, being able to give something away and say thank you to nature. And that was very beautiful. And one of my memories that I will really cherish is the cotton tree giving us her flowers. The cotton tree giving us her flowers. That felt like it was a call and response. And taking that moment to have that mindfulness and have that mindful connection, I think really does make a difference to the art that you want to create. It doesn't feel so hollow, something that you can't pay for, you can't find on the internet. You have to go and you have to experience, and I think that's what this trip is about, is really going and experiencing and embodying those places.
It's absolutely magical to be in these spaces that the actual River Mama might have been in, might have lived in, might have passed through at some time. When nobody's around at this waterfall, she probably would be there combing her hair, but nobody can actually see. The space itself has this kind of energy to it, and thinking about work, painting with the water in the space puts a lot of that energy within me, within us. Whenever the work is being developed, and just being on location and taking the reference pictures there, it was a really magical experience. I remember just seeing, Roisin and Jodine in the water interacting as playing the night and the River Muma. When I'm shooting it, it's not that they're acting. That's the thing. It's almost like I'm shooting them in this space, but like a parallel version to themselves is actually the characters that I'm talking about, the night and the River Muma. So and be doing it in that space or rather than in a like a cold studio, photo studio environment against a white wall, I wouldn't have gotten that feeling. And I think that energy is really important when you're making work. You have to believe the work. You have to believe what you're doing. It's not just, you're not painting a picture of, you're channeling an experience. You're allowing this magic to move through you. You have to believe it. So being in the space and taking the reference pictures there, I think is really building me up to really create some magical work. I'm even more excited. I said at the start of the residency that I'm really interested in learning, a lot from Roisin, seeing how some of what we learn together can influence my own practice, and I've been seeing some of that happen, especially with like the curiosity to the blue maho wood. Like I saw that wood at the wood workshop all the time. I walk right past it. I say, I guess it's nice, but it's not dark colored. It's not, But then kind of picking it up, milling it off, and seeing it in the studio, laying down, ready to be worked on, or something like, wow, I might actually be interested in just using this wood overall too. So that's just one example of just how things are shifting, and just showing up to the studio every day, working on even the frames. I found more efficient ways to work on the frames because of being in the space, and learning more.
Working with other people, that's such a privilege to me. I think it's not something I take for granted. It's something that I'll take with me when I'm on my own in my studio. And it's not the things that you think would inspire you that inspires you. It's the things that people say to you in passing and they stay with you for the rest of your life and it can change the course of your life. And I think that is the beauty of human interaction, and I'm really learning that in my time in Jamaica, of that beauty of creating with people and creating with people with love. And I explore love in my work. Being able to create a community of love creates the most beautiful things. And so I'm really excited, I'm settled, I'm comfortable, and I feel like I'm hoping to make, and I think we're making something that's meaningful to everyone that's been a part of it. And I have to say thank you and give grace and gratitude to be able to be here and to be with the people that I'm with. Having your hand in every single step of creating something, whether it's in the frames or the painting or finding the images and creating the images and finding the location, that makes something very valuable and very beautiful. And I think taking the time to really commit to that practice, and that's what I'm seeing it as, is commitment to the practice. It is going deep into that practice. We're not just, oh, I'm an artist. It's not that. It's going deep into the practice and going into what art really truly is about, and it's in communion with your subject. It is, in essence, a communion with the world around you. Being able to be in a situation that is different from what I'm used to has really made an opportunity for me to grow as an artist. And so that's what I'm really getting out of this, of allowing myself to truly commit to the vocation of art as a practice, not just as a job title or a title we use to study. I feel like water is part of my own personal law, and I think a lot of the things that I talk about comes from that personal lens. My family migrated out of Jamaica, so water is going to be intrinsic about that history. There's that sense of journeying and the Atlantic, and water just became a theme. Water is kind of the theme of my life, and it's kind of how I connect with my Jamaicanness. So it's like unavoidable.
Water has been like a very central theme within my work. I use water from rivers, or natural sources. I only use what I call living water to paint my work. There has been times in my work where it's just been around water. I had a series called Breathe back in like 2020, 2022, and it was just really about water and just the metaphor of water and just how dynamic and how complex it can be, and just how many stories are within the context of water. And then I kind of grew up around water in a certain way with the specifically I used to go to the river with my father a lot, and those are some of the best memories kind of growing up where I would wake up early in the morning. My mom would like fry chicken and would go to the ocean, not the beach, sea, the more unrestricted and unregulated part of the coastline, and it was just so beautiful. That's it, jellyfish and massive stingrays, and you kind of be scared, but then you be curious at the same time about this thing. I used to look at the water and kind of wonder, why does the ocean have different bands of color in it? That's so interesting. That's so weird. We have dark green, light green, and purple, and blue. So there's always been this curiosity within water, and then water has like an entire spirit in itself. So man, it just made so much sense, and how this collaboration came together. Water for both of us has been an unavoidable theme within our lives and within our practices.
I used to also go to the river with my dad. So where I grew up, behind our houses, and there's the stables, and then behind the stables is the River Thames. And so I don't know, it's kind of a bit of a unique experience in London, but like we'd take the ferry across to the other side to go to the park, or we'd play in the water, go fishing. And so like even at home, I'm surrounded by that sort of ecology and that space.
I guess I got a bit more reverent towards kind of throughout this project, hearing different stories around water, and then I think it's mostly like hearing the stories and the lore around water that made me even more reverent to water, and then hearing probably hearing your own personal relationship with water and with the ocean.
Actually, I think having that connection to land is something that's changed for me. There's not really a clear sense of like identity within my works. It's not like there's no themes and symbols, and so like everything feels Jamaican. The wood in your work is Jamaican. The water you're using to paint the picture. I think that really like flipped a switch for me, because I was like, okay, well, like what is the relationship even within the work that connects to the water? Now I have a personal relationship to water, and it kind of comes to the theme of the river mama. We were talking about it with my grandmother, so there was a reported river mama in our pond on our land in West Milan, and so it's like, for me, like it feels like there's a lineage there. When I think about myself, I think there's a lot of, as Richard is looking at me suspiciously, there's a lot of like connections to the River Woman and myself as a person, like how I was born, and like just some sort of weird things. So it's like I feel like I could be water. I don't know. That's the change. Like maybe I could be water. There's like, how do you create a character for that? And so that's been it's been a very broad theme, but we're finding these like little threads that are kind of like entangled.
Rivers have been around for so long. They've seen different settlements kind of become cities. Rivers they are like natural archives in a way. When I'm inviting the spirit of the river within the work, I'm inviting a lot of history, of a certain place. I'm inviting a lot of history of my country and my culture within my work. There is that spirit that is there, and it's really important to me, especially with the work that I'm it's a lot about remembering, and I want rivers have been holders of memories for many years and many generations. So it's important for me to invite that willing to work in whatever way possible.
We've been making some ceramics, and so we've actually been using the water to create the ceramics. So so that's another way to approach the live water, and it's kind of, it actually feels a little bit more like sacred. I don't know, that we're molding it out of the water. It's a nice way to locate myself. I think for me, it's the flip side of like not really having. I have a hybridized identity, and a lot of the things that I worked on with my thesis and like my research is about the idea of diaspora and memory and honoring, and there's a part with like Lisan talks about, you know, the alluvium of living within a multicultural society, and so there's just lots of water ways to describe it. So I think being able to locate myself now here and like use the water to create something, it gives it a different energy, I think.
Definitely contributing. Because we grew up on a lot of these stories, hearing different stories about the River Mama, and sometimes as Roisin said, there's reverence, but then there's this fear. So I don't really see much work that kind of tells her stories. So I think this will a lot of people come and there's a lot that can be learned, and I think when people come after the show, there will be a great sharing of people probably talking about their own River Mama stories, the River Mama stories within their family, stories that they've heard. So and then this big sharing within this context will leave people wanting to probably share more and keep these stories alive.
Like, because it's such a well-known sort of myth and folklore, it's good to experiment with it, but there's an idea that people have about this folklore already in their heads, so it's kind of trying to subvert that and sort of question that. But as well, the project as well is cross-cultural exchange, and these stories still keep us connected. Like, they're a part of the heritage and the culture, and so being able to do the practice of storytelling in itself and like showing like that this is cross-cultural collaboration, that's meaningful, and hopefully that will bring more opportunities to make people think, okay, like well, how do we all claim this heritage without taking it away from local sort of culture? I can understand because there's similarities, but what are the differences? And I think that's maybe how I feel about the exhibition as well. It's about the River Mama, but it's also about this project that we're undergoing to build this body of work, and building on the culture as well, and then spreading it and disseminating it into the world and into the diaspora.
I felt a responsibility to the river, to the spirit, and to the stories of the river. I felt a responsibility to not make the River Mama be this all dark, evil thing that kills people. There's so much more perspectives and so much more angles to really understand.
I felt a responsibility to deep learning. We spent time at the library as well to look at different folklore, and that was kind of important to me to understand what it means here, because I know about the folklore anecdotally from my family, but not the actual folklore. And in terms of like as a person from the diaspora as well I understand me coming into Jamaica that has a certain meaning, and so being patient in terms of allowing people to talk about things in a way that maybe won't be obvious to me felt important. It has deepened my sense of place and my sense of identity, and sort of made me ask questions about myself as a person as well as an artist, and like the responsibilities I have there. But then it's also kind of made me feel more comfortable about my Britishness too, and like the fact that I'm somewhere in between, whereas I've always felt a little bit dislocated and sort of kind of like adrift. And I guess it's kind of making me like, no, you're not adrift. Like there's a little bit of Jamaica, there's a little bit of the UK. Like that's the mix.
I don't know. Usually when I hear about like Jamaicans that didn't necessarily grow up in Jamaica, I can only relate to them to a certain point. Because there are certain things here being on the ground, one wouldn't probably wouldn't really know, or probably wouldn't be interested in understanding. A lot of times what I found is that sometimes people within the diaspora might not be so interested in Jamaicanness, that they probably just would want to wear it as like a badge. But that has shifted, especially with Roisin. It's the search to understand more, and to be invited in the conversation. It's not, there's this authentic curiosity, and I realized that I didn't have any issues relating with her. Most of the time I don't even have to speak, like we kind of talk on my talk, and she understands. So that's been such a really beautiful experience. She mentioned something, and she was speaking about like just how how she grew up, where she grew up in the UK, and she spoke about just stories, folklore, how important those stories were to her in kind of growing in different parts of her identity in. That's so cool to kind of hear her say that, to come from a different place, but to really actively make connection to roots in Jamaica. It's not just saying Jamaican and wearing it as a badge, but actively understanding what that really means.